Welcome back to the Courageous Pivot podcast. I'm your host, Meghan Telpner, and this is a very, very special episode. There is a part of me that is terrified to share this, in all honesty. Kristen Nagle is my guest. She is a truth-telling, fierce warrior mama, and we get into topics that are, quite honestly, quite divisive, outwardly. And I've known Kristen for a long time, and I've known about these topics and participated in a lot of things she discusses. And I've been, though outspoken throughout the COVID years, 2020 to 2023, there were aspects I just didn't want to touch on, didn't want to deal with the DMs in my inbox, and didn't want to impact my company, which had several people relying on for their salaries, for their livelihoods. But here we are today, the Courageous Pivot podcast, where I'm choosing intentionally and sometimes in fear, with fear, I shouldn't say in fear, in love, in truth and honesty, to share topics that are challenging. And much of what we talk about could possibly challenge you. You might not agree, and that's a beautiful thing. I don't agree. I'm not in alignment with everything Kristen believes or says or does. That doesn't make me think less of her. That doesn't make me want to distance myself from her. I'm not afraid of what box I could be put in for talking to her, for having her here, for sharing her friendship. I believe what she has to share is deeply, deeply valuable and important. And that's why we're here. That's why we're here doing this work together, to find our own alignment with ourselves and to learn to do so without fear dictating our choices. Here's a little bit more about Kristen. Kristen Nagle is a former NICU, NICU nurse, turned truth teller, speaker, and founder of Faithfully Fearless, a movement empowering women to reclaim their God-given design and live with faith-fueled conviction. After 14 years in conventional healthcare, Kristen stood boldly in truth, risking her career, reputation, and livelihood to speak out for health freedom and faith-based living. She is the co-founder of the Reclaiming Birth Conference, now in its third successful year, and has been recognized as a top team builder, paving the way for mothers to create a life of purpose and freedom while raising their children. Kristen's work is rooted in the conviction that we don't have to choose between family and leadership. We can have both, anchored in truth and faith. From personal story to professional expertise, Kristen blends heart, truth, and actionable steps to help women break free from fear, reclaim their voice, and lead their families with courage and clarity. I want to invite you into this conversation with a wide open heart and open mind to listen, to learn, and maybe ask a few questions of your own. I hope you enjoy this episode. Hello, my friends. A quick interruption before we start this episode. Kristen had a few audio challenges. She didn't have a headset in, and we did the best we could to clean up the audio. I didn't want to re-record the episode because there was just so much in here, and I knew that we would not be able to capture it if we tried to replicate it again. So bear with the sound. You might have to adjust your headset or use headphones or don't use headphones, however it sounds best to you, but it's definitely worth listening to because there is so much in this. I hope you enjoy it. Hello, Kristen. Welcome to the Courageous Pivot podcast. I'm so happy you're here.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
You are one of the single most courageous people I've ever had the fortune of knowing. You've gone through one of the most profound shifts I think I've witnessed. I don't remember when. I think I knew you before the big thing, but I can't remember because it's all fuzzy now.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to let's start early. So how many children do you have? 3. You have 3 children.
3, yeah.
Yeah, that's why you can't find your headphones. I don't know how people function. I can barely manage the schedule of one child who has one extracurricular activity. I just don't know how. I mean, you were a nurse, so I know that you're built differently than I am. So let's start. You were a nurse for how long?
14 years.
And you've said that your gateway was you started questioning things after you had your first son and were trying to figure out how to feed him.
Yeah, in 2015.
And so what was it that tipped you off? Like, was it the teething cookies? Was it the formula that's just soybean oil, soybean oil? Like, what was it that kind of opened your eyes in that first process?
Yeah. It wasn't even like a particular food item or a thing. I now look at it as like, I didn't really have any faith then, but now I see it as like this like divine intervention, like almost like this voice being pressed on me, like look into what you're going to feed your baby. And I was pretty cocky at that time. Like I was still like an indoctrinated nurse, and I was like, I studied nutrition in nursing school. Like I'm a pediatric nurse. Of course I know what to feed my baby. We're into like, health and fitness and being active. I was like, of course I know. And, but I was in the stroller boot camp, and some of the moms and our instructor was talking about food differently than I had heard before. And it was like this voice, this pressing kept being like, look into it. And so being my first baby, he would just sleep in my arms, and I clicked a documentary. I was like, all right, like let's dive into this. And that was the start. I was like, what? I was like, what do you mean? It was like, that was the first thing I had learned about of like the corruption around food and the lies and everything we'd been told. And then I became hooked. And I was like, well, then I started consuming every single food documentary that there was available at that time. And then I enrolled at the Canadian School of Natural Nutrition like that following year, so in 2016. And then it snowballed from there.
What, so you studied, you were delivered a course, we'll call it, in nursing school on pediatric nutrition, which I imagine was more about, calories than micronutrients, I'm guessing. Is that accurate?
Yeah. And based off of the Canadian Food Guide. Mm-hmm.
Right. The pyramid that turns us into pyramid-looking humans.
Exactly.
How was that transition? So you were a NICU nurse, so you're with babies, you're with nurses, and there's a very close relationship amongst nurses in that setting. And I know because my son was in it for a week. How did your views around food shift within that community? Like, how did you function in that way?
Yeah, this was very interesting to me. So, everyone that I worked with was very open to what I was learning about food. I think they kind of like knew things were kind of off. They wanted to be healthier. They wanted to feel better. They noticed like, whether they're illnesses or things in their family or within themselves or, their own children, they were very curious and very interested in what I was learning about in nutrition school, and were very open. And I did start to kind of question, like obviously the formulas and the things that we were putting in their feeds, like adding it to mom's breast milk. Like breast milk is already perfect, and we were adding in all these extras. So I started, being very curious about those things. But it was really fascinating that they were very open to what I was doing and wanting to learn more, until I took it one step further and started to learn about, well, what are we actually injecting our children with? And then it was like this hard like line that I could not cross.
So you've labeled yourself as like a fully indoctrinated nurse into the medical system. Do you remember what that was that made you say like, okay, this is what's in our food. Let me take this a step further and become completely ostracized by questioning what we're using in these injections and medications and the entire medical system?
Yeah, well, I had made so many changes within our home with like how we're eating, what we're eating, where we were getting our food from, products we were putting on Logan, my firstborn, like just his entire environment. And then it was kind of like, well, I'm so concerned what's going in his body because, I know it shapes his mood, behavior, every cell, like it sets the foundation for his growth. I'm so concerned about this. Like, what is he actually being injected with? And it was interesting because I started to question it, and another veil was lifted, and I started to see things differently in the unit, in the NICU, where I would watch 23-week microprems. They're born at 23 weeks, and at 60 days of life, still not even technically full term, would receive their 2 months injections. And so by this point, they were, growing, breathing on their own, just getting better, closer to getting home. Then all of a sudden they would receive their 60-day injections and start having bradycardia episodes, apnea. So their heart would stop or, miss beats. They would stop breathing. They would need to be placed on mechanical ventilation. And if they were in kind of the step down unit, which means they're closer, not needing as much intervention, they would normally have to be transferred back into the higher level. And I started to be like, are we concerned about this? Like asking questions. And then I was just labeled, that was it, like as crazy for even questioning it. And at the bedside, we would just give report, oh, so-and-so is having a lot of spells today because they received their shots. So, it's just normal that their heart's stopping and they can't breathe. That's just a normal side effect of what we're doing here. So I couldn't unsee what I was seeing. But I remember taking these concerns to my pediatrician at the time, and I wasn't equipped with enough knowledge when I was in there starting to question my first son, because unfortunately he did receive his up until about like 18 months. And when I started questioning it, I wasn't equipped with enough information. And I fell in the trap of, well, what if something happens to him and it's all my fault? What if something happens and I could have prevented it? The what ifs. And I always say now, like, what if is just a slippery slope to despair. And so I was left feeling fear-mongered into a decision I'd later regret. And I remember thinking, I will never allow fear to make a decision for me again. And that's when I left. And I was like, I'm either like convicted, yes, I know why we're doing this and we're going to go through it, or it's a no, but it's going to be on my decision, not fear-based. And yeah, so then I dove deep to all the learnings from there.
And so as you're questioning this, and are you like bringing it up with your coworkers saying like, this seems odd, like, or was it just, you would bring it up and it was absolutely shut down? Like, what was that? What did that look like?
Yeah, I would try to bring it up, but no, it was just shut down. It was just a line you could not cross that no one wanted to hear. Of course, children need this to survive. Of course, it's for their best interest. Of course, it's safe and effective. Like, no. And then I started to be bullied online by colleagues. They didn't use my name, but I knew who they were talking about, including my pediatrician. So needless to say, we stopped going to her and all well baby visits, but it's like, oh, like Kristen, she's just going to give her kids bone marrow and think that it's like all fine and, avoid all these shots. And the bullying had already started around, because I became quite loud around 2018 about it. Because when I left my pediatrician's office at that last time, the fear, I didn't actually look at the injections because I wanted to understand childhood illnesses, because we're not really we're not taught this. Like, I don't think people realize, like, nurses are not equipped with this knowledge. It's like, these are the injections, this is the schedule, kids need to survive, like, go at it. Even though we have a massive book on every other, like, pharmacology book, every other, like, medicine out there, toxicology, all these things, but injections, no. Childhood illness, not really. So I dove deep into the history of it. Like, what's the worst case scenario? How do they acquire these? Are there any treatments? Can you prevent it? If they do acquire it, what are other remedies that we can do? Like, what, just the whole broad picture of it. And it was interesting because once I actually went down that rabbit hole and understood and was powered myself with knowledge, the fear went away. And I was like, oh, these are absolutely unnecessary. I was like, now I understand. Like, I don't even need to look at the ingredients of the injections, although I did and learned more about them. I didn't need to at that point, because once I faced the fear of the childhood illness, I was like, well, these are nothing to be, we don't need to fear these. I'm good now.
Yes. And I think it's worth, and I just want to sort of jump in with a bit of my own experience with this, because when we bring up vaccinations, it's so triggering for so many people, and it's believed to be an absolute black and white issue. But I think there's very few people who come to questioning the schedule who haven't had a personal experience or observation that triggered that deeper dive into it. And I don't know of anyone who's taken a deep dive into it personally who hasn't started to question it. Like, anyone who's gone into it and said, like, oh wait, this is a great idea. My own questioning came after I received my slew of vaccinations to travel in Africa. Didn't go well. I was sick for 3 years before I had an autoimmune diagnosis. And then when my son came along, and I want to just point out something you said, that it was a fear-based decision. And courageous pivots are from the heart. And when you change your mind about something to a unpopular view, it's the most courageous thing of all because it doesn't always line up with logic and it really is from the heart. And my agreement to induce birth was a fear-based decision, that the fear was put upon me and I felt like I had no one supporting the decision that I felt in my body. And I'm like, well, they know better. They're the experts. And that was the last time I needed to learn that lesson. And it was a horrible experience learning that lesson. And for us around the vaccination, I wasn't 100% like, none, no way, absolutely not. But I was like, we're going to delay, especially because of the way my son entered the world, build up his strength. And in that time, we started studying about it. And like you said, and I don't have the medical background that you had, but I had the holistic nutrition background, and Josh has functional medicine, that when you understand the diseases or the viruses, as the case may be, that come and go, we didn't have any of the risk factors that would present for an extreme case of those diseases or viruses. Like we have sanitation and we have nutrition, like two basic things. He's not malnourished and he's not living in a world where there's poop in the water. Well, there's other things in the water, but not poop, we hope. And I think, just because I don't want anyone to shut down and not listen because we're talking about this, to recognize that so many people who are questioning this, it's that heart that is guiding us from love instead of fear to try and figure out how we best care for our own children. And it may not be and won't be everyone's decision, but it's worth hearing the process, I believe, to get to these decisions.
I think I found that the most interesting. Like I mentioned how like my colleagues and people around me were so open to everything I was doing with food. But once I took it a step further, that was it, just shut down. They didn't want to know, well, how did you get from here to here? Like they saw my process, but then it was like, nope, now you've gone too far. Now you're just crazy. Yeah. Yes. It's fascinating.
Yes. And we had that too. Like Josh and I had been working in the field for so long already by the time we had our child, more than 10 years. But yeah, that was the thing. Like, well, now this is too much.
Yeah.
So what was it like for you? You're a nurse, you're still working in the hospitals, but now you're becoming an outcast and like being bullied by adults, which is insane on the internet. What was it like for you when suddenly like that whole foundation got shaken up and your identity and your training and your livelihood was tied to a profession that you were losing faith in? I mean, I wouldn't say you were losing faith in nursing, but in the system in which you were practicing.
Yeah. No, I would say I was losing faith in nursing because it wasn't what I thought it was. It wasn't what I thought I had signed up for. It was like, you're a critical thinker, but only if you stay in this box, don't actually really critically think, and it was becoming really tough. So Logan was born in 2015. That like changed my entire trajectory of my life. I was enrolled at the Canadian School of Natural Nutrition from 2016 to 2018. So all these aha moments about health and wellness, and then childhood immunizations, everything. Like it was a big 2 years. And then my second son was born in 2018. It was like, okay, putting everything that I'd learned like into practice. So I said, no to, the eye ointments, the injections, everything. Like he, has had zero things put into his little body. And I remember that moment. So each of my children, I look back and they all came in to teach me like such a profound lesson. And Liam was my second, and it was to trust exactly how you're created. Like you're just perfect divine design. And I remember holding him in my arms and just staring at him and watching him grow and thrive. And I was like, what a lie we've been told. That you need something outside of yourself, even outside of me, outside of your design to thrive. Like you're just so perfect. And so it was a heavy burden. It came with a lot of grief, remorse, repentance, like, because I was like, I had to recognize my role in all this too, of I fought with people, I used the term anti-vaxxer before. I didn't think I could be friends with like one of my now dearest friends. Like, but I was like, oh, I don't know about the decisions you're making for your children. I don't think I can be a part of that. And, at one point, Adley, my third, like that's a whole story about birth. But I thought home birth should be illegal. I was, giving these children injections, like pushing all this stuff. So it was a lot of heavy betrayal because I wanted to go into this industry to help people. And then I realized, I was kind of being used as a vessel of harm. And that was something really hard to come to terms with. And I think that's what fuels me so much now, is because I've seen it, been a part of it, and I want to help others avoid it and, change the outcome for our children and for the future.
Did you ultimately end up losing your job? Were you fired, or did you quit over this?
No, I was fired. So in 2018, because when I really felt convicted on what we were doing with childhood immunizations, I can't even call them immunizations because that means that they're immune, which that doesn't happen always. But these shots, I began speaking out again on social media and all, loudly wherever I could, and trying to educate parents. I was like, I was not educated in this, like here, like have actual informed consent, right? Like that has never existed in the hospital. It's kind of a joke to think about. But I got in trouble with my college then in 2018 for doing this. I had already reports against me for speaking about these things. It finally got wrapped up in 2019, and I had to. I wasn't ready to lose my career at that time and go through all the things. I wasn't ready to lose my license. And so I took the slap on the wrist and said, you're right, I'm wrong. I won't do it again. I won't post anything on social media. I won't do all the things. And then I walked out of that disciplinary hearing because it took place in Toronto at the head office at the College of Nurses, Ontario. And I turned to my union rep and I said, but if they ever come after my children or anyone and try to mandate anything on them, there's nothing that's going to stop me from speaking up next time.
Right.
And I didn't actually think I was going to have to put that into practice so soon. it was like February 2019 or something. It was all wrapped up. And then, 2020 was a short year later, like just felt like a roll around the corner. And then here we are. And I was like, oh, looks like I actually have to put my words into practice. And so I started speaking out very early about masks, lockdowns, the harms that were happening to our children. People were writing into me and telling me horrific things that were happening to their kids, watching my friends' businesses shut down. I want
to go into that, but I want to go back before we do to 2019, to you making the decision, knowing that you could no longer speak from the heart or even work from the heart. What was that year of nursing like, where your colleagues knew how you truly felt, you knew how you truly felt, but you also needed the job and wanted the job still? So how did you show up to work every day caring for these, tiny beings, while in a lot of ways being out of alignment with your heart?
Yeah, it's a great question, actually. It was incredibly difficult. And to tell you the truth, I didn't really want the job, but I didn't know how to. I grew up with following the rules, kind of like you get a job, you walk the straight and narrow, you get the pension, you get the benefits, and that's what you do. You get that job security, and that's what you do for your life. And that is the world I knew. And so when my second son was born, I swore I was never going back after that maternity leave. And I was blessed to have 18 months off from work at that time. They were giving us 18 months. And I was like, I'm not going back. And I did, because I didn't have a backup plan, or I didn't, all the things, right, that keep us kind of in at that time, that fear place, the financial security, all of it. And I did. And it was killing my soul. I just hated every moment of it. I didn't really have a relationship with my colleagues anymore. I basically would hide in the back. I would the room I would keep to myself. I would just do my job, care for the families, care for those babies that I did love. And I would try to, educate when able in ways that I could, during that time. But it was incredibly difficult. It was one of those things that, I look back now, like my husband, bless his heart, oh my gosh, because I would work like a day, night. So 2 days, 2 night shifts, 4 on, and then you have your 5 days off. And always at the end of my set, come home and just pick a ridiculous fight with him for no reason. It was like needing an outlet that I couldn't get out at work or somewhere. And he would call me out on it. He knew. And sometimes he would just walk away because he would know what was happening. And he was so patient with me. And even, trying to call me out on like recognizing where it was coming from. But it was a really hard year. Yeah, my soul was dying.
I think I've described it as once you know the truth, like the truth in your heart, that calling, you can keep doing the work, stay in the relationship, keep doing what you're doing, but the divine source of energy is gone. It's like pure force, pure effort, which will result, in my case, it's always a health crisis. Some people blow up their relationships. They destroy something else in their life to avoid having to deal with shaking up the foundation that they think they've built their life on their own belief set. And that's what you're saying, is that you needed something to rage against in a lot of ways.
Mhm.
We are taking a brief little pause here because I want to share with you a course I created just for you and just for the courageous pivot process. It is called Rise and Shine, a guided approach to heart-led living and leadership. In this course, I go through a very simple strategy, practical tool to help you learn how to tune into your heart, but not just tune into your heart, how to learn to trust the guidance that you receive. This is about understanding the local intuition, the recognition, remembering what it is you already know, and being able to continually build on the evidence to trust the guidepost that is within each and every one of us. I want you to head over to courageouspivot.com. You can scroll down there and you'll find a link to the course Rise and Shine along with a 30% discount. The course is built to take you about 4 weeks to go through. There's 5, 10, and 15-minute meditations included with it. There are beautifully designed slides to go with the presentation material. There's audio-only options for the course. You can listen while you're folding laundry or going for a walk in the park or painting a picture or crocheting a sweater or baking cookies. For me, maybe even. Who knows? I've received cookies in the mail before. Rise and Shine is a wonderful bridge to bring you into this work in a way that is really, really accessible and profoundly powerful and effective. Head over to courageouspivot.com, scroll down, you'll see the link to Rise and Shine. There's a little trailer video that tells you all about it. Register and get instant access and get started today. Your life is waiting, and let me tell you, what is on the other side of the path of the heart is love and joy and freedom like you've never experienced before. So let's go to 2020. And I'd like to think now that all of our listeners recognize that things were not done as well as they could have been. I stood from a place almost immediately, like, protect the vulnerable, let people take care of themselves, and let's take care of our health. And my feeling was if no one's going to tell me what to put into my body or on my face, if I can't tell them what to put in their grocery cart. And that was how I felt. It's like we're sovereign beings, and everything that passes through the world can pose a risk, but at what cost do we have to live through, quote, safety instead of living? So take me to at what point you quit or were fired.
Yeah, I do want to say, just because this is another part of the unlearning and where I'm at, and it's very unconventional. But because I took learning about childhood illness and I kept going, I ended up, I call myself the fringe of the fringe. I don't believe in viruses or contagion anymore. And so when they started, so when they started to push all this in 2019 in Wuhan, I was like, oh, this is not good. They are going to be mandating, they're going to be doing something to get adults like to submit. Like I just knew. And so I was speaking out from the beginning. I didn't know at this time, like the whole world agenda. I just knew that was not going to be good. And because I stopped believing in, contagion and viruses and all the things. So I would speak out online, doing kind of exactly what you said, like just trying to teach people about nutrition. Like all that was being like pumped out of the news was just fear, isolate, mask, like all these things. Like, and I was like, okay, these are things that you can do to boost your immune system, or, to feel healthier, or, just teaching all the things that I learned about in school. Essentially, I was trying to just come at a place of like things that people can do to remove that fear. And, spoke out. And then it was November 2020. I had been posting online, saying a little bit at work, but not a lot because I had to keep, quiet. And I actually spoke at City Hall September of 2020 about the harms of masks on children. And that video clip went viral and got me connected to larger groups. And then by November 2020, I was like, okay, I can't, I don't want to just be behind social media and posting. Like I felt like I really had to do something. And so with a friend and I, we hosted a freedom rally in our hometown, rented a pickup truck. That was our stage, stood on the back of this pickup truck in a blizzard. And it was the most beautiful thing we had seen. We couldn't believe the people that had come out. It was London's first big rally, and we were so proud of ourselves. I was already suspended at this time. I was suspended in November because colleagues knew that I was not following the rules outside of work. Outside of work, I was not isolating, not wearing a mask. I was telling people how they don't have to wear a mask, like what to say and how to stand up for themselves. And my colleagues became afraid of me. They were afraid to actually work with me. And so they would send in reports to management that I would pull my mask down to my nose when I was sitting alone on my computer, that I put my goggles on my head, God forbid that something was going to come out of my eyes. I don't know. But that was in the reports, that I would put my goggles on my head. So I was suspended for insubordination, for not wearing proper personal equipment. And
I just want to interrupt for one sec, because there's interesting things. And a lot of us who were out of alignment with the protocols of that time, I feel like whenever we see each other or meet up, it's like everyone wants to tell their story of that time, because it was such a profound pivot point for so many people. And just before you go on, I wanted to mention something that had stood out to me from the fall of 2019, because you mentioned seeing this virus in Wuhan and being like, what is going on? And I read your posts. I haven't gotten to a place yet where I can denounce contagions. I'm like, I want to believe, but I'm not there yet. But I also fully value and appreciate that we can all have different views or not be in alignment, and maybe not in alignment yet. And that's also a beautiful thing. And that there doesn't need to be one right answer for every human on the planet. But in 2019, two things happened. There was a Gallup poll that rated government and pharmaceuticals. It was like, what industries do humans have confidence in? Do Americans? And media, government, and pharmaceutical was at the bottom of the list. And I was like, this isn't good. This isn't good. Because if we don't believe in these three things, then we don't have the society as it's built right now. And the other was that in New Jersey, I'd read a story, and it's interesting because you remember these little things that come up and you're like, why do I remember this? And there was a community in New Jersey with Orthodox Jews who did not vaccinate their children. And there was a supposed, in quotes, measles outbreak. And those children were banned from the playground. And then ultimately they were allowed back in because it was declared anti-Semitic. But I'm like, how do you do that? How can you ban children? How do you, it sat with me. And then 6 months later, when I see the swings swung around and caution tape around playgrounds, it's like, okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So November 2020, you organized your rally in London, and now you're like, was there any part of you, because I've had this thought that to speak out, and I did, not to the extent you did, but it has the potential to blow everything up in a different way. It's not just your job. Now for me, it was my company, it was my employees, it was family relationships, it was friendships. Was there any part of you that was like, why can't I just keep quiet? Why can't I just take and protect my own family? Why do I have to get on the back of a pickup truck with a megaphone?
Yeah, people always ask me that. It was so hard. It was so hard to stay silent. Again, my soul was already being crushed at work. And in 2018, for years, we had fought as nurses to not wear a mask during, quote unquote, flu season. If you did not get the flu shot, you had to wear a mask from November till April. We had fought for years. In 2018, we finally won. And our union proved that it was discriminatory and did not stop transmission. And so here we finally won. And a short time later, I'm watching everyone just slap these masks back on their face. And I'm just what is happening? Like, what is happening? And I was raging. Like, I couldn't do it anymore. And so I was kind of naive. I knew my career was over. That is the one thing that I did know by speaking up. Like, I was done and I was willing. That was okay for me. I knew that was done. What I was super naive to was the media. And I had not really witnessed or understood how dangerous the media can be. And so after that rally in 2020, the next morning headlines was LHSC NICU nurse Kristen Nagle in hot water. And they listed where I worked, what hospital, and put out my whole details so people knew where to find me. And so the hospital was bombarded. I think they said they had to hire in extra staff at that point to handle the phone calls coming in, like, but she took care of my baby. Like, people wanting to like sue that I could have been involved because the article continued to go on how I put premature babies at risk, how I put their lives in danger, right? You can just imagine the horrible things that were said in this article. And so I was indefinitely suspended at this time, placed under investigation by my College of Nurses of Ontario, and my reputation and character completely destroyed publicly in my community. And I could see all the comments from people that I used to have like great relationships with, not even colleagues, but businesses. Me and two other moms, we ran, it was called Sweaty Successful Moms. Like, we did community events, like we brought people together, and seeing what, those relationships, what were saying to me, phone calls from my family, what my husband had to listen to with, his side, and then reading a 3-page letter from an incredibly close family member that they wanted my license revoked and I should be immediately terminated. And the words that were used in that letter, I was shattered. That was probably that's where I hit kind of like the rock bottom of all of it. Mm-hmm.
That was the hardest part. It's like a kick in the gut every time. I've described it as that feeling like where there's an oncoming train and you're trying to scream to warn people and your voice won't come out.
Yeah.
How did you manage? So you've made this courageous pivot of speaking the truth that you knew to be true, or the truth that was in your heart. And now your neighbors know, you go to the grocery store, like you live in a small town. Like how did your day to day change because of this decision or calling? I don't feel like it was a decision, because I think when it happens, you sort of feel like you don't have a choice. It's like, why was I called to do this? I don't know, but this is what I got to do.
There was a lot of fear of not knowing where I could go, who might say something, where I'd feel safe, where I'd feel welcomed. And thank goodness there was several places that shared same views, and we're so thankful. There was, it's not open anymore, but this beautiful coffee shop, 1018, and they were just so amazing. And it was always a safe place for my family to go to, where we always felt welcomed and we knew we were safe there, and people that would go there were like, so we had a few pockets, and that's what we kept to. We kept to our pockets where we knew we were safe and accepted and we were going to be okay. Everything else we would avoid. But this is my kind of coming to faith part, because I still remember that exact moment and how I felt, like the gut wrenching knife in the back and all of it. I've never cried so hard in my entire life than I did for that day, that weekend. But I just prayed. I had nothing left. I was not really a believer or anything. And I prayed, what am I supposed to do? How do I even get on from this? Like, I felt like, I let my entire family down, because now they were living with the burden of like, their daughter doing this. It's out in the news. They had to answer to their friends and beyond and everything else. And then it was just kind of this voice of, you got to get up. It's all for nothing. So you have to get up and you have to keep going. Otherwise it'll all be wasted. And I say, like, God, now like I believe in Jesus. He put me back together stronger. He put all the pieces, he collected them off the floor, all the broken pieces, put it back together. And he's like, no, he's like, I'll be with you. Put on, I say, put on the armor of God. And he's like, I'll be with you. Keep going. And that's, I found other nurses speaking out in the States, another nurse speaking out in Toronto, another one not too far from me in my community. She wasn't able to go public yet. We found people, and we ended up forming Global Frontline Nurses at the time with the American nurses, like Nicole Saratak, Nurse Erin that did the expose in New York. And we ended up going to Washington, D.C. on January 6th, 2021 with Del Bigtree and the High Wire. And me being so naive of the political situation at the time, I just wanted to go get the message out. It was so beautiful to be connected with these other courageous, strong nurses from all across the states in different departments, different areas, but shared the same concerns and the same things we were saying. And we actually felt kind of just so alive. We're like, people are going to listen to us. Like, we're going to make a difference. We're so naive at that time. Like, we really thought this was going to get out and it was going to make like the news and people would just stop this nonsense. And that obviously did not happen. You know, people were thankful. But when we came home, little one came in to join. Sarah Shajunian and I, because we were the two Canadians that went to the States, we came back and we were deemed domestic terrorists. So we were domestic terrorists and immediately terminated from our jobs. And that was it. So that was early of January 2021. And I was like put on the watch list on the United States border. That was interesting, trying to cross at one point.
You had mentioned being at that lowest point, and that's when you started to pray. And you're not the only one who has said that in the conversations that I've been having. UJ, who's one of our guests, he talked about, he was in a motorcycle accident, and being in the amount of pain he was in was what invited him to begin to pray. And what he had said was the prayer became, how can I use this to serve others? Or how can I become of service? Or how do I make this useful? And I think that's a really powerful question to ask when you're hit in that, whether it's the lowest point in the transition or the messy middle of it, is knowing that there is value in this, even when it's so exquisitely painful to be in that process. You turned to religion. Was this new for you? Like, had you been raised in a certain religion? Like, was this like, what is happening to my mind or my heart? Like, what is this?
I went to Catholic schools, elementary and high school, was not really brought up in that, but that is what I kind of knew. And that's what pushed me away from all of it, from all faith, from everything, was the Catholicism, the religion. And I will say that actually didn't turn to religion this time around. It was so different. It was a relationship. And that was the difference of what I was missing in the past with Catholicism. So it was really interesting. That's what pushed me away. I always knew there was something out there, but I didn't really know what it was. And I had turned into kind of like other like new age beliefs. And I just remember that moment where I hit the ground and like everything felt broken. But I also remember at that point, I was also doing a lot more research about like what is going on in the world. And it led me to some of the darkest places, like pure evil. And I was like, this is demonic. Like, this is just pure evil that this is happening. And I remember thinking my affirmations are not strong enough to defeat whatever that is. And there's an opposite and duality to everything in life. So if this is, if I want to label this demonic, Satan, evil, there has to be one thing that's greater than this that can defeat it, that is pure love, that is, victorious, that, because love always wins. And so that also kind of helped me build and strengthen my faith in that aspect too.
Beautiful. That's beautifully said. And a big question that people have is around, I think a big pause people have in doing the big scary things is the isolation and feeling alone. And what you're saying is you actually found your people quite quickly, which I also have heard is sort of I don't want to call it a trend, but I've described it as you're riding in an elevator and like that journey is like the dark elevator, but then the doors open, you're on a new floor of that building. You're like, oh, this is where I'm supposed to be now. And here's my people and here's my place in the world. And this is my role. And sometimes it's your role, whether you want it to be or not, because I don't believe you really get to decide this. It's like, it's part of why we're here.
Mhm.
When you stood up, you were going against every expert, every institution, everything on the news, everything that was coming up on our phones, because everything else was being censored. So there was only one story. What ultimately gave you the confidence to trust what you were reading and learning and knowing without knowing how you knew it?
Yeah, it was, I think I was so blessed. Like you said, I did have people around me. So even though I had so many that shunned and rejected, and I lost so many, I had like core people around me supporting. And even after, like, when we came back home after January 6th, we went international news as these domestic terrorists of all these, bad things we were doing. And the amount of hate that came in that found us was so overwhelming and terrifying. But then this beautiful thing happened, because once the hate went through, because the hate, I've come to realize, is just a moment. They come through, do what they need to do, and then they're gone. And then once that wave went by, the support came in, the love and just the encouragement and other people's voices, and knowing that they were so happy to find someone that also felt the same, that they no longer felt alone. And because it went international news, people now knew how to find us. And so it actually did us a favor. And this happened for a little bit, where we kept ending up in the news because they thought they were discrediting us. But it would just bring in another wave of support. And they actually stopped. We were actually disappointed, because they stopped sharing anything that we were doing. It actually wouldn't even make it into the news anymore, because they realized it was like not helping them. It was like gaining more traction, even though they were trying to discredit us. So there was a lot of support. Like I said, I put on the armor. I had strong faith. I just knew for my children, the other children around, like I had parents telling me that their 6-year-old was pretending to slice the wrist with credit cards. It just was not a future that I could sit idly by and just let happen. And like you said, like it was outside of me. Like it wasn't really a choice, right? You said calling it, just I look back now and I was like, well, yeah, it just had to be done. When I was in the moment, you just go through it, and looking back now, it's like, yeah, it's pretty wild that all of that took place, and that I did have that voice. And I equate that to my that the people around me encouraging me, and then, like I said, the strength and faith that I was developing.
So it came at a cost, like not just your career and not just communities and relationships, but fines. Were you arrested or just fined?
I was never arrested, just fined many times. I had 11 provincial summons for public speaking. One of them was even going to church on Easter Sunday. I ended up having to resign my nursing license in 2023. And the total of fines and legal battles was just over $100,000.
Where's all that at now?
There's still a bit that we're picking up the pieces from. There's still an outstanding fine that I have not, I don't really want to pay. It's about $10,000 from organizing a London rally. But there was so much love and support. Like I just, it makes me so emotional. People helping and voting, I guess you could say, with their dollars, like just showing their support for me, their outpouring love. And a big chunk of it was covered because of people's generosity through Give, Send, Go support. And I don't even have enough words to say how appreciative my family and I have been for that.
I think that shows support is because of the love and appreciation people have for you.
Mm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
You did what very few of us were prepared to do or had the capacity. If we take it now to, was it January, February 2022, when the Freedom Convoy moved across the country, and it was one of those things that I think everyone will remember the rest of their lives, some for different reasons. it was obviously turned very negative in the media very quickly. All of those claims have since been unfounded, but again, not reported on. The things that were said that were not true, the actions that were taken that were not justified, all of that has been proven. So I just want to reiterate that. What I think about with the Freedom Convoy, and I want to ask you about ask you to share your role in it, but whether people were in alignment with that specific action or not, what I've often wondered is what would have happened if it hadn't happened. Because I know most people, no matter where they stood, wanted their children back in school, wanted to open their businesses, wanted to work for a living, like the basic things and freedoms we should have in our country that we had grown accustomed to and maybe taken for granted. So in January, February, when I don't even remember, I was really unwell at the time. I don't know if was it a contagion or was it the energetic virus? We don't know. I was so sick. It was all I knew. And I was in bed and I was watching your live feeds in tears, quite honestly, and sort of messaging my friends and I who, I was fortunate to have a close circle of friends that did not change. My question was January, February 2022. You took your family to Ottawa for the Freedom Convoy, and then you ended up right in the front. Like you were not just jumping in the bouncy castles. What was that?
Yeah, I had been at a freedom rally. It was like still when we were doing those worldwide rally days. And one had just happened in London, January 22nd, 2022. And a trucker stood up and was talking about the next morning they were going to roll out and head to Windsor. And he started talking about this convoy. And I had seen glimpses come across my feed and these things happening. And we were Canadian frontline nurses at that point, but we had taken a break, like even just kind of backing up a bit. Some people remember, but not everyone. But in September of 2021 was when they're mandating injections on nurses. And we took a national stand to support them. And the summer of 2021, we had just traveled across the entire country to bring awareness and speak out and encouragement and hope. And we made all these connections. And then the fall of September 2021, these injections were rolling out for nurses. And someone suggested about doing a protest in front of this one hospital. And I was like, we can do better than that. We can do one across the entire country. And so we had all our contacts from across the country and we organized the national rally across Canada at all the hospitals and main cities in every province across the country. And it was all the exact time. So it was like this rolling wave from the east to the west, and talk about hate that came in. Because the media, we picked a very targeted spot and a very targeted cause, and we were not at the hospital doors. We were very strategic of where we were. We had the police were helping us in each location to make sure we were not interfering with anything.
I wanted to clarify that too, because that was what I kept seeing people posting about, like, how dare they interfere with people who have to be in the hospital and have to go to the hospital and visit people in the hospital. But I just want to clarify the truth, which was that you were not at the front doors. You were not blocking anyone. You were not interfering directly with anybody.
Not even the slightest. Yeah, it was so organized and so well thought out, and just made sure that we were, doing everything, safely and efficiently. And you talk to anybody that was there at those places, they will tell you how amazing it was. But the media all across the country had the same story, same three things: is that we interfered with ambulance access, we assaulted healthcare workers, and we stopped cancer treatments from happening. Those very three specific things. And after that, we were so burnt out. We were just so done with fighting. And we had to we did 2 hospital rallies though, because we were encouraged by a doctor. And I'm glad that we did, to do another one. And we did, but now the media was ready for us. Now counter protests were ready for us. Like, it was kind of an epic failure, the second one. And after that, we were kind of done. We were so burnt out of trying to do everything that we could. So we pulled back a lot. And then it was almost like we didn't know what else to do. And so I saw a glimpse of little convoy stuff happening, but I didn't know what was going on. Because again, I had kind of removed myself to try to, heal, recoup from everything. And all of a sudden, when I was at this rally in London, this trucker talking about it, I was like, what's going on? Give me the details. Like, we need to kind of know, like, what? And so the next morning, I went home after this rally and I said, Chris, my husband, I was like, I think we need to go to this thing, like, see what this is about, going to Windsor, because they started almost a week early around where we are, right in southern Ontario, to allow the West to catch up. And so we went out early Sunday morning, and at first we met one car in London that was going to head to Windsor. And we're like, what is this? There's only one car here. What are we getting involved in? And then we rolled up to the spot in Windsor, and that's where all the trucks were. That's where all the people were. And for me, the big sign was the truck that was leading everyone had a big label on it that said, Jesus is King. And I was like, what is happening here? And anyways, we did the rolling convoy into Ambassador Bridge and back. We did it a few times with my boys in the back. Baby girl was not born yet. And I just remember thinking, like, this is something we need to be a part of. This is what we've been waiting for. This is the stand that we've all been waiting for people to take. And so when it was time to head to Ottawa, I found two other girlfriends to come with me, and we left with the London convoy and did the whole thing to Ottawa, like under all the overpasses. I think anybody that was there, for either standing on it, driving under those overpasses, that is something that's going to be etched in everyone's mind of how beautiful and hopeful and just encouraging it was. It's like, oh my gosh, look at all these people finally.
Yeah. I was going to say, everyone had been hiding.
Yeah.
Like, that was my experience online. Like, I lost a lot of people. I got my daily nasty DMs, and I ultimately just had to accept that not everyone will see it, and that's okay. And again, like, not everyone agreed with the action of that movement, but the unifying aspect of it, and that it created a necessary shift in influence, that the citizens were reclaiming the lives we wanted to live.
Mm-hmm. It was so powerful when we arrived in Ottawa, and we were there just for the weekend. I had to drive my friends back home, but as soon as I got home, it's like, Chris, we have to go back. And I think I was home for a day, and then we went back and with the boys, and it was just so incredible. Like, it was like, we're like, oh my gosh, the support, the love, like the people just, I knew I had to stay at that point. I said, I was like, Chris, I can't go home. Like, I know I need to stay here. I need to be here and like show the world the truth. I need to be here and support. This is what I've been fighting for the whole time. And I can't leave. And he understood. So he took the boys home. They were just there for the weekend or whenever it was. And I stayed in the Sheridan Hotel, called the Freedom Hotel. And I was there for 4 weeks, 3 weeks, and then another place. I was in Ottawa for a total of 4 weeks, boots on the ground in minus 30, interviewing truckers, interviewing, the people that showed up, just trying to bring the truth out. And I remember, like, we would just meet people and we're like, this is the happiest place on earth. Like, the love was so palpable. Like, it's like nothing that I'm sure we'll ever experience again. And, watching, like, in pure Canadian culture, like the hockey, the road hockey, with the Stanley Cup they made, and people shoveling the snow cleaner than how they found it, the food, the homeless being so fed, and just so incredible. Everyone just giving each other hugs. Like, literally we would see each other, be like, this is the happiest place on earth. And what I learned from that experience was that when you are supported, when you're connected in community, when you feel the strength of the numbers with you, there is nothing that can stop you from doing what you know you need to do. Because they kept trying to throw obstacles at us, challenges, threats, and no one was budging. There was no fear. We just all worked together. We found solutions to overcome this and that, and no one was succumbing to any kind of fear. We just knew what we were there for, and we knew that we had each other. And so even in those last days, I still look at it as a win because they wanted us to fight back. They wanted an excuse to show the world, see, this is why we had to come in. This is why we had to do this. And no one, not one single person did. Like, I couldn't believe it. I remember this woman, there's so many different examples, but this one specifically just like kills me to think about the line, right? Because you have like us facing these officers facing us. Like there was a literal line formed, and this woman with, just so Canadian with, the cardboard box of Tim Hortons coffee, paper cups in one hand, walking down the line, offering both sides, the officers and, us citizens, need some hot coffee? You want some coffee? Like just literally just walked down this line offering coffee to everyone. Yeah, I just think there are so many lessons in that. And after that, it was just, for me, the lesson was that we have to go back smaller, meaning we have to take what we learned here and bring it into our hearts, our homes, and our communities. And that is how we're going to survive whatever is coming. But we have to take everything we learned here and we have to bring it back home.
That's what I believe is what's happening now, with how many people are shifting and asking bigger questions. Again, those 3 years, I think, were a microcosm of like an amplification of what's been happening for a long time on a broader scale of, like you said, working in a job, following the pattern, the values of your family and how you were raised and how you should continue on whatever that tradition is. And I think that our times call for different, like our times call for, I want to say, a bigger life, not like a famous life and not like on the back of a pickup truck with a megaphone kind of life, but a more purpose-driven, heart-led, if you have a certain belief set, it's following that belief set to a place that is one of love and connection and community and truth and acceptance. That is truly what, that is the language of the heart, is gratitude and acceptance and compassion and love. And if we don't do that, I can't even think about the outcome, because I think we saw, a small glimpse of what it looks like if we turn away from that calling that we have in our hearts. And I think that's what that last 3 years showed us that we lived through. And some of us saw it then, and some of us saw it later, and some of us see it now, and some people are never going to. We all have our role, and that's okay. So you had this secure career, prestigious, I would say. I mean, you were doing God's work in some respects as a nurse of babies, like the sweetest, most innocent, most dependent human form that we have, couldn't continue, then accumulated $100,000 in fines for being, a reckless citizen in your attempts to help people find the light and the love and the compassion. And that ended, thankfully. Thankfully, we're not still having to do that in that way, in that regard, at that level. And you're saying now it's about bringing it home, leading from the heart. And you are still a leader, and you do still do leadership work in all different kinds of ways. I think in much softer ways now, easier on your nervous system.
Yes.
So what was that pivot after? You couldn't do the frontline nurses anymore. The convoy ended. The mandates dropped for most people. The nurses that were fired for not getting vaccinated, were they rehired? Was anyone rehired?
Yeah, there's been different pockets of nurses that have been rehired and jobs offered back. They've been offered options of severance or their job back. There's still some outstanding legal battles, I think, in the works. But yeah, I think most of that now, there might be still a few that have not been offered back. But I think for the most part, they got pretty desperate. And quietly, the policies at the hospital dropped.
Right. So now you've taken another pivot because you lost your license. So you're not going back to nursing in any capacity. You have your Reclaiming Birth conference. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So going back to how each one of my children has taught me like the most profound lesson. After the convoy, I was blessed to march with James Topp. He is one of the most incredible humans out there. I don't know anyone with his courage, his compassion, his strength, like actual physical strength. I was blessed to march with him for several days into Ottawa. I think I did about 100, it was like 144 kilometers. And I remember the one day I so badly just wanting to like finish it with him. And I think I ended up doing just over 40 kilometers, but I had to tap out for a little bit. And I remember it was like everything over the last couple years, like all of the emotional weight of it all turned into the physical pain I was feeling of like trying to push through this march with this man. And I thought, and I just like, oh my gosh, the release in all of that, the tears, like I had to stop and just collapse, and I just cried. And I just thought, I think it was the weight of everything finally releasing, and also thinking, this man, like I just did one day that I didn't even finish. I ended up getting back up and I did finish with him, but I had to take, a break. And I just thought like, and he's marching across the entire country for all of us. And I just had this like the most amount of empathy and respect, and I don't even know if there's words to how I felt towards him and what he was doing, and just, again, all the years of everything. And I think that was a great way to kind of end my fight, to put it, and just watching what he was doing, because all of a sudden he's like, I did what I said I need to do. He's like, I walked across Canada. I showed people how they can step up in their own way. He's like, I did what I knew I could do. Now you have to find what you can do. And then that was it. He was done. Right. And then he just like is going back to live his life, and, all the other repercussions. It's not that easy. I know there's things, but essentially, and I just thought, oh my gosh, you were just able to walk away. And I was like, I need to figure out how to do that. I'd been struggling with expectations that I felt were on my shoulders from everyone else about continuing to fight, continuing to stand up, continuing to do all these things. Like, we had formed this organization and, to keep going. And I was really struggling with how to even walk away from that. And then I became pregnant with baby girl. I didn't know I was going to be having a girl, but it was like everything I had been speaking about, fighting for over the years, everything I had learned with my first two sons. It was like, that was like full circle, because now I had to fully come into surrendering to our design, trusting this process without knowing the outcome. And I was like, I don't want to fight anymore. I don't want this negative energy. I don't want to be in this like rah, like state. Like I want to focus on this life that I'm creating, and I want to create a new way forward and solution. So I like think like what a blessing she came into my life. And so I, at a geriatric pregnancy age, advanced maternal age, I'm
in that club with you, by the way. I was the whopping old age of 37 when I had my son.
Right. I was pregnant with her at 39. She was born a week before my 40th birthday. And I had no tests, absolutely none. And it was the most peaceful pregnancy I'd experienced. Again, this is me, like, remember indoctrinating nurse that home birth should be illegal. And like absolutely zero tests, fully just trusting. And I had my out of system home birth. And it was the hardest, most amazing thing I'd ever experienced. And I'll never forget the difference, because I was also induced with my first. The induced, epidurals, the whole conveyor belt of, the labor funnel with my first two. And I remember, not feeling anything, right? Because, and just giving up my power, being like, well, of course I know what birth looks like. I worked in the NICU. You just go in, they'll tell me what to do, and a baby comes out. Like, I was like, and that's it. And so my boys were just placed on my chest, and it was like, oh, you're here. Like, super exciting. Like, but the difference in the bonding, the difference in that experience, and the postpartum, the breastfeeding, like now, like it was so difficult with my first, but now I see why. We're coming into this, my last pregnancy, birth, and it was so intense, and it was difficult, but we did it. And that's what when she came out, when she was born, that's the first thing I said to her was, we did it. Like, we did it. I knew she was part of that. Like this, I don't know, it always makes me emotional to think of that versus like, oh, you're here, to a, oh my gosh, like we just did that together and you were here like in our arms. And so I knew that, again, all like my past experience I had to take is fuel to move things forward. And I just wanted more women and families and men to know that there's another option, because I didn't know there was at that time with my boys. And when I did learn about it, I felt robbed of an experience I didn't know existed.
Yes.
And I never wanted anyone to feel that way. And I wanted everyone to know that they are capable, that this exists. This is how we were designed, and that it is the most incredible thing we can go through if we're blessed to be able to. And I just wanted the information to be out there. And so we formed a Reclaiming Birth Conference, and we're now going into our third year of hosting that. It's coming up September 19th and 20th. And I'm just so excited for what it's growing into.
It's amazing. And I've witnessed the growth of it. And I've often thought, and I have said aloud to Josh, had I known you 8 years ago, even like just you, no one else, no conference, nothing, I could have been like, let me call Kristen because I'm 41 plus 5, but I feel great. Like, do I have to do this? And I think that's just it. It's like, it is the same with the COVID. It's the same with all of it. It's that when you are isolated, the fear is so much easier to take hold.
Mm-hmm.
And base your decisions around it, which is partly why I want to have this podcast for people who are going through these transitions to recognize like you are not alone. You're not a special snowflake. Like we all go through this, and it's messy and it's difficult and it's terrifying. And it also can feel very, very right and peaceful in your body at the same time, even in amongst the external stressors and the fear and going against what we believe we're supposed to do as women, as mothers, as adults, as Canadians, as whatever it is, to be nice and good and not rock the boat and all those things that come up when you're making shifts that look crazy to people who don't get it.
Mm-hmm.
So I want you to speak to the mothers just before we wrap up. I think mothers have now in 2025 one of the most challenging jobs, especially when it comes to following the heart and following the mother's instinct and the mother's wisdom in what to feed their children, in medical decisions to make for their children, in school decisions and technology decisions, and in all of it. Terrified of being the one parent who opts out of something. We're the one parent who opts out of pizza day at school. Like we have our own minor, but they're things. What would you say to these mothers who are wanting to make courageous pivots for their children and for their families and are afraid of the implications of them or the ostracization of it?
Mm-hmm. The first thing I'd want to say is, what is the message you're showing if you don't, right? Because you want to do this for your children. And if you don't do it, we always say lead by example. So what's the message that you're sharing with them or showing your children? And what kind of, life path that you're showing them to take? And also with everything that I had gone through, it was like this stripping away, and it was a breaking of chains, and literally like ripped me raw of everything. But it was for the first time ever in my life that I finally felt like just me. No mask, nothing to hide behind, nothing to, pretend or follow this path or, it was finally just me, and everything else was taken away. And it was the greatest gift ever to be able to feel that way. I remember being at one event and someone asked, like, who feels like they're less free now than they were a few years ago? And a lot of hands went up. And I was actually the speaker after. So I kind of, again, pivoted in what I was going to say. And I went up there and I was like, this is the most free I've ever felt in my entire life. This is the most free I've ever felt, because there are no chains anymore. There's nothing holding me back. This is just me, God, my family, and I get to be in control of that and decide where I'm going and what we're doing. And so even though you feel like you may lose, you're going to end up gaining so much more. and be on the path that you're meant to be on. I'm so grateful for everything that happened in 2020 and the lessons each one of my children taught me from 2015 and beyond, because I know I'm exactly where I need to be now. And I'm so grateful that I can build a life heart-led, in alignment, on our terms. And it's messy and it's chaotic and I have no idea what I'm doing. And it's a lot of failing, but a lot of learning, a lot of skill development and personal growth. And I would never have it any other way anymore.
It's profoundly powerful and impossible to communicate the feeling of living in alignment with who you are in this moment.
Mm-hmm.
I hope everyone gets to that place in their lifetime. I think most people get to it at the end of their lifetime.
Yeah.
Sort of the reckoning and final days where they're like, why didn't I do this more? Why didn't I, spend more time with my family, spend more time with my friends, do the things I love? And it's profound and it's scary and it's difficult, like you said, and it's messy and you have no idea what you're doing because there's no blueprint to live in alignment with your own soul, your own being, because you're the only one. You're it. Looking back at your journey, you lost your career, persecution, fines, finding faith, rebuilding, rediscovering who you are now as a mother of 3, no longer wanting to or needing to fight the way you did. What have been the ultimate gifts for you from this transformation?
That's a big question, but I love it. It comes back for me is that the faith aspect is huge because it is shaping the rest of my, perseverance, my courage, my strength, knowing that it doesn't have to come from me, that I can, call on something, greater, his strength, not mine, and to keep going and knowing that, to keep being lifted up. So that is huge, but also knowing that amongst all the failures, the fines, because people worry so much about the money. And I know that's why so many people don't take leaps of faith into the things that they want. I'm sure you hear this all the time, and that's what comes up, is that it's just an energy shift. And it'll come back, it'll go, it'll come back, but nothing ever has to be permanent. And you'll always be okay. Like that's I guess the biggest thing is no matter what has been thrown at us and it's been difficult and challenging and we sit in it, but then we find a way forward and it's like, okay, but now what? And we always, keep moving forward and it's a roller coaster where you keep finding a way. And I guess that's the biggest gift of it creates less fear because it's like, okay, well, this is scary. Like we're in the middle of actually selling our house. We don't know where we're going, what we're doing next, but it just feels like that is like the next phase that we're ready for. And everyone's like, well, what do you mean you don't know what you're doing next? So we're like, I don't know. We just feel like we're ready to be, give this house to someone else that can love it. And I guess that's the biggest gift is just knowing that it will be okay. Even when it's not, this too will pass and it will be okay.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I think we realize and can see all the things we're giving up, but we can't visualize or imagine or know what's on the other side of it and all the gifts that come. Mm-hmm. So where can people find or learn more about you? Where would you like everyone to go?
You can find me on KristenNagle.ca. Send out weekly newsletters and just kind of events that I'm up to. And then I'm still most active, I guess, on Instagram at Kristen_Nagle. And if you'd like to learn more about the birth conference, how you can be involved, attend as a guest or as a vendor, it's reclaimingbirthconference.com.
Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, friends, for listening to the end, for being brave enough and bold enough to listen to what this conversation brought forth, the topics raised, the issues we discussed. And I want to thank you for being here as part of this community. Now, in every episode, I'm trying to offer a little bit of an assignment, some work to do to move yourselves towards or through or recover, as the case may be, from that courageous pivot. And so the question I want you to ask yourself, and maybe in a journal entry could be helpful, 5 minutes, like ask the question, set the timer, and see what comes, is to choose something in your life that you would be afraid to lose. and ask yourself, what would life look like without XYZ, whatever it might be? What would life look like without that? Because again, as I said in the conversation with Kristen, we often only can think about what we're losing and not what we may be gaining. And that could be everything from the decision to have a child, the decision to change careers, to move cities, to sell your house without knowing where you're going, which it's interesting. Both Kristen said that and our earlier guest, Angela Del Agua, has done the same. But as you might start to see as we move through this, the more people give way or lean into these courageous pivots, the more trust and faith they have in them. Again, I want to thank you for listening. If this resonated, please leave a review, share it with a friend, share it with someone who you think needed to hear what Kristen had to share today. And I look forward to seeing you again next week. Thank you and have a beautiful rest of your day.